Hey everyone, and welcome to today's tutorial, which is the first part of a series of Octane within Blender. So yeah, I asked on the YouTube channel, and it seemed that a lot of you wanted to learn more about Octane. So in this tutorial, we are going to be creating this render here, and I just want to go it from the beginning to the end with installing it and setting it up in Blender, and then also further on to lighting, texturing, rendering, and composition, and so on. Um, the reason why I think it's important that we do this also is because we want to take Blender serious as a competitive tool compared to Cinema 4D or Houdini. We also need to be discussing the render engines. So I really love Cycles. I think it's an amazing render engine, but yeah, but it's just the case is that Octane and Redshift or V-Ray, etc., is just way more production ready. It's industry standard, and I would also personally say they are more developed and they are better render engines. And the good thing about Octane is that we can actually access it for free in Blender. So yeah, let's just set it up and yeah, let's get to it. So all of you can start getting comfortable with this render engine and start doing commercial ready work. So this is the Otoy website, and you have to make a profile. So right now I'm logged in with my profile. You just have to create one, and it's free also. And then afterwards we are going to the shop section, and over here you have a lot of different options, and the one that we are looking at is under the free trial. So here we have two options. We have Octane X and Octane Render Prime. So the Octane Render Prime, that's for PCs, normal PCs, and the Octane X is a newer kind of addition to this, Octane's, what do you call, like, all of the different kind of plugins and softwares, and it's the Octane X, which is made for Apple computers. So you need, which it also says here, you need an Apple Metal GPU, for example, the M1 or the newer M2 chip. Furthermore, there's also just a maximum of one GPU available for rendering, so you cannot do the network rendering. And if you have more than one GPU yourself, you can also still only use one GPU. And you also need to be online, which means that you can only use the software when you're connected to the internet. So of course there are some limitations to this, but I think they are okay, considered it's free. You can always just buy, the correct and full version, and that will work uh, without all of these limitations. So you just have to click the try now, and you will get to this page here. And here there are a lot of different versions for Cinema 4D, Maya, and so on. And for Blender here, you have to download two specific things. So you need to download the Octane server, which is the server that will stay connected to the internet and allow you to use Octane. And then you also need to download the latest version of Blender that contains Octane. And this is often, a version that's a bit behind what Blender's initial releases is. So, for example, I think for the newest Octane Blender version, we have the 3.5 Blender edition. But there is a 3.6 and soon a 4.0, and so. But I think that consider everything, they often get updated quite often. So here is been updated back in May, so that's not that long ago, as you can see. So you just click these links here, and they will download, and then they will pop up in your download folder, and then you can just, yeah, that's all actually. Extract the zip file, and what I did was I dragged the file down here, and then I actually renamed it to Octane Blender. And that's if you want to, keep your other Blender file with the cycles, you can do that, and then just have this one specific for Octane. So yeah, so I think that's basically all for the for the downloading and setup. And as you can see up here on my computer, I have the Octane server put on. You just have to search for the Octane server, and you can just enable it by just clicking it, and it will appear up here saying that it's turned on. So yeah, so now I will just open the Octane the Octane Blender document, and as you can see, I'll just drag it over here. As you can see, if I go up here and click about, you can see we have the 3.51 version of Blender. So we know it's a bit behind, but it's still okay. So yeah, this is our default scene. And over here under our render engine, you can see, you can see no Octane is showing up. And then you might start to panic and try to download it again. But don't worry. The reason that it doesn't show up here is because we have to enable it as a plugin. So we're going here up to the edit, and under the preferences, you can see under the add-ons, just refresh it, and we can just type in Octane. And now you can see that we have this Octane Blender plugin, and we just click it and save preference and click it down again. And we can, just save it to the desktop. And if I go over here to the render engine, you can now see that we have our Octane down here. But first of all, I just want to set up the scene the way that I like to set it up for the most part. So I'll just delete everything here, go into the X view, then adding a camera, because in Octane for Blender, you always need a camera to be able to view your renders in the render view. That's just the way Octane works. And we're just choosing a focal length of 85, for example, and I'll go with another resolution, 1080, just like a Instagram friendly one format. And then I'm going to drag a new window over here, and also one down here. So in this tab down here, I'm going to the shader editor and change this to bold. And I always have this set up so I can always access the world properties down here easily. So yeah, and over here we'll just go to the camera view, and we can scale this one up a bit. We don't need this one, so this is purely for a better visualization of our scene itself. And as you can see, I just love when things are organized, I guess. But yeah, we can turn these things off, maybe just keep this one here. So now we have our view and we have our world settings down here. I actually think I might want to create a new one which has the Octane environment down here. So I know this is called, we can just add an texture environment. Maybe I could just texture. Oh, it's just an environment texture. That's because we haven't changed to the Octane yet over here. We're still at Eevee. Sorry for that. So we have this world properties down here, and because it didn't work that well with the groups, it wasn't like an Octane group. It's because we're still on the render engine Eevee, and so yeah, I also sometimes figure things out on the go. So we have to change it to Octane, of course, and then we can just add a new one. You can see we get the texture environment and the Octane world output down here. but we are not going to deal with this one right now. So first of all, I'm going to add just a sand head here, just so that we can see better what's happening here. Maybe just dial it back to a 50 mil like this. And now we have our Suzanne head here. And we can just for the purpose right now, I'm just going to subdivide and shade smooth like this. Perfect. So this is our scene with our initial object here, our Suzanne. And now we can start to play around with the actual render properties themselves. So under the Octane, I should probably start by saying that within Octane, there is two things that's important when working with the render engine. It's the render properties themselves, and then it's the camera and what the camera actually outputs and sees. And this is different compared to cycles, and you will see why in just a bit. But let's just run through these settings over here first. So to simplify, we don't need to do anything about that. The Octane kernel, this is the render engine itself and how that works. So I'm just going to stick with the classic, and then you can choose all of these depending on the realism of your scene, but path tracing is going to be the most accurate one. So I'm choosing this one. And the quality, it's just the same as with cycles. You have different kind of depths with the glossy, scatter, diffuse, and you can play around with these settings here. The clamp settings, I always put down to like 5 or 10 because this will minimize the fireflies in your scene, and you don't need it to be that high. Yeah, and we can choose adaptive sampling, which means that the it will just stop rendering cleaner image of the part and focus more on the noisier part of the image, like the shadows. But yeah, that's about it. And of course, the quality samples with the preview and the max samples here, you can change them depending on your specific project. And we are, of course, going to be talking more about this when we do the final part of this series with the render output. Then we have motion blur, the Octane server. We have all of these things as we also have in cycles. And then the important one here, we have color management. So right now, I've seen a lot of people doing different things with this setting over here when showing Octane and Blender, and there are different ways to go about it, but I have a very straightforward and easy method, and I rely on this, and I think you should use this one too. So for the display device, we are going to be using sRGB because this is the color space that screens are used to, and that is the most common color space within, just screens in general. For the view transport, we actually want to set it to raw. So we don't want to apply any filmic or anything else to this one. We want to view the raw view of this because we don't want Blender to affect anything on the Octane render. We don't want Blender's color management to affect our render in any way whatsoever. So we have the view transport set to transform set to raw, and the look, we are not going to change this one. We're keeping it at neutral. So this way we will not have Blender affecting anything on the Octane render engine, as far as I know anyway. Under the camera settings, there is some other things that we can do instead. So just to show you, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a simple light, just like an Octane area light here. Just dragging it up here, and I can just scale it up here. And under the camera view, I'm actually going to take the viewport display all the way down. And when I go into the image, now you can see it's really bright, and that's because we have our texture environment also set to full. We can dial this one down just for the. This is where you would normally put in an HDRI or something, and we will also do that, of course, not using this one here. But this is just for showcasing. So right now you can see we have this one down on top here, and yeah, it looks fairly nice. It's a bit blown out here, perhaps. So we can also go into the shading of this one here. Will show you all of these things later on, of course. Um, but this is just for the settings. So now we have our Susanne hit lit up nicely here. I think we can do an even bigger one, just like this, giving it those raccoon eyes. So get back to the setup here. So the other thing that was really important besides the render settings and with the color management itself, you also need to be dealing a lot with the camera settings and the camera properties down here. So let me just go through these one by one. So first of all, we have our lens, and this is just like with cycles or Eevee. We just have our lens. Then we have our camera, and we have our viewport display, which I always turn up to not affect anything around it. And then we have our Octane camera here. So in here, you can see we have our f-stop, or you can use aperture for more depth of field in your image. And yeah, you can baking the camera and do all sorts of things that's really complicated and not even necessary most of the part. But this is just, as you can see, much more detailed than cycle. Then we have the two most important things, I think, here, just to learn you guys, is the Octane camera imager, which is the way our rendered view is from the camera. So we're going to turn this one on, and you can actually see that it's affecting our camera just a bit with turning down the light just a bit. And under here, we have a lot of cool things that we have, like vignette, exposure, hot pixel removal, a lot of really cool. You can add in your own ICRO, like Aces color space. We also have a highlight compression, which is what gives us that nice highlight roll-off that we so often associate with professional Redshift or Octane renders, and we don't have this in Blender. So for example, you can dial this one up and you can see how it gives us this smooth highlight compression on our image. And you can play around with the values. So this is really nice, and really will give you that smooth look that you so often see in other things. We can set neutral response so it's not affecting colors. We have our denoising settings here. And yeah. And then the other thing that's pretty cool is the Octane post processing, which is, if I enable this, it's just our processing settings. So for example, bloom, you can add bloom to an image, which is cool. You can add a bit of glare also. Right now we don't have some cool and interesting materials, but you can see that when I turn this off, we will get a more gloomy, glary image with these settings here over here. So yeah, so that's basically it for this tutorial, this first part here. Now you have successfully downloaded and installed Octane for Blender. You have these settings here. You know that under the like the render properties, the colors management, we have the raw view transform with an sRGB color space. We have our Octane camera imager over here, which is affecting everything. You can also, add in different kind of cool LUTs, which we don't have in cycles, but you get like film stock like Kodak or Portra here, which is give you instant cool images without the need for more color grading. So we have a lot of possibilities in Octane for Blender. So yeah, and what you can also do is, I should maybe just delete these things here. When you have set everything up and you have your camera and this is looking all nice, and you think, wait a sec, next time I open this, everything will be deleted and this doesn't look like this. Actually, you can go up into the file, and then under the defaults here, we'll just click on Save Startup File and click OK. And what this does is that next time we open Octane Blender, this will be the thing that open up with all of these settings already set up. So this is just a cool way to quickly get into a flow and a more productive workflow. So yeah, thanks for today. And this is the first part. And yeah, looking forward to the next ones where we are actually going to be setting up our 3D assets, our watch object, and also going to be setting up materials and stuff like that. And then afterwards, we're going to be looking at lighting and post-processing. And then finally, we will export our project, and yeah, it will look really, really cool. So thank you so much, everyone, and see you next. Bye.